This week, HP is debuting some new devices for the enterprise. FireMon has announced support for some new stuff. The Bitdefenders are defending the bits from the defenders from the on the home network defending bits. Bitdefender.
Just move on.
Bitdefender. Landesk gets bought, and every single security vendor on the planet has either recapped 2016, made predictions for 2017, or both, which is interesting but not really. And Nginx gained some traction. All that and more. Oh, and the more is cyber insurance will be our topic. And we're bringing on a special guest who you will recognize on the show to talk about cyber insurance. All that and more on this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production.
This episode of Enterprise Security Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Access over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand via Chromecast, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, PC, or your mobile device. IT Pro TV's premium membership grants access to all courses, transcripts, virtual machine labs, and transcender practice exams. Corporate and group pricing are available. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the life of your account, visit itpro.tv/enterprise security and use the code ES30. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customers' sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Tenable Network Security, creators of Nessus, the world's best vulnerability scanner. Jumpstart your security program today and evaluate Security Center CV, the continuous security monitoring solution. For more information, visit them on the web at tenable.com. Pony Express, check out their line of penetration testing devices, including the Pwn Pad, the Pwn Phone, and the Pwn Pro. For enterprises, there's Pwn Pulse, providing continuous visibility into wired, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth spectrums across all physical locations, including remote sites and branch offices. For all those hard-to-reach places, there's Pony Express. Visit them on the web at ponyexpress.com.
Welcome, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly, episode 28. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. On the lines via Skype is none other than John Strand. Welcome, John.
Hello, everybody. Coming at you from the headquarters of Black Hills Information Security in Rapid City, South Dakota. Rapid
City. Nice.
Yeah.
I think of it as like a scene from those Western movies where they walk through the double doors and they always have a shootout. Westerns were kind of the same thing. Like anytime you're in a restaurant in a kung fu movie, there's a fight scene. Mm-hmm. Anytime in a Western movie that they're in a bar, there's a shootout.
Yeah, and that's more like my house, but yeah, still the same general location.
Excellent. Mr. Michael Santarcangelo is joining us today. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. No better way to start the new year.
That's right. We're going to be talking about cyber insurance in our next segment, which I always summed up in one sentence. Apparently, there's more to it than that, which is...
We're going to try to fill some space.
That's good. I've got some... do I have an announcement? IT Pro TV. Yes, very important. IT Pro TV is introducing a new membership level on February 1st. All current premium members as of February 1st will be granted the highest membership level available. So make sure you sign up today at itpro.tv/enterprise security and use the code ES30. Alrighty. HP is debuting some new devices in Las Vegas at CES, which I thought was interesting for our enterprise listeners. As we, people get new devices, those come with obviously security concerns. They are debuting an HP Spectre X360, which is like a tablet style kind of laptop looking thing, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Did you guys go ahead, John?
I've been hearing a lot about the CES show, and it sounds like it's more and more of the Internet of Things, and it's really, really, really bothering me because I feel like we haven't gotten computer security even remotely close to fix with standard notebook computers or tablets or mobile devices or anything like that. And it just looks like we're on the precipice of this huge explosion of things that we don't look at as operating systems. We don't look at things that need to be patched or upgraded. And I have this intense fear that it's all about to get a lot worse rather than things getting better. But there's no way we can really stop that. People are going to innovate, come out with new products. We're just going to have to learn to keep up.
Yeah, it's interesting. The other devices there, Sprout Pro, which is the second generation all-in-one PC, designed, I think, largely for commercial applications. It's got Windows 10 Pro, 2D scanning and high precision 3D scanning, including an active pen, which is pretty awesome, for pressure sensitive digital inking for annotation and design.
Wow, it looks really, really cool, but it also looks like something I would not use. But yes. I could see if you're into art and things like that, or CAD, it would be just really fantastic.
Or maybe a point of sale system too. I can see this being used for a point of sale system.
Oh, where we're buying things using the 3-dimensional gloves like they did in Minority Report.
Yeah, that too. But I mean, that's a good point too. I think a lot of people that are doing security in enterprise, be prepared now, because the people that work for your organization are likely to be like, hey, I want one of these newfangled devices. And who knows what treasure troves of security vulnerabilities all these newfangled devices with all this new functionality is going to bring.
Yeah, I'm guessing a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a safe bet.
That's always a safe bet, right? FireMon has announced future support for Check Point's R80 management platform. Very briefly looked into. Have you guys ever heard of or used the R80 from Check Point? It's like a policy management platform.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting. We got a policy management platform to manage the policy management platform.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird, right? Like, why do you? It's like I have a turbocharger in my car, but you want to put another turbocharger to turbocharge my turbocharger.
I heard you like turbochargers.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's like with the Apple computers, you need a dongle for your dongle right. to get it all connected. And I don't know, Michael, I'd like to get your opinion on this because I'm definitely a propeller head, right? That's what Paul and I do predominantly, and you serve as a great counterweight for that. And it seems to me like we're seeing more and more like the idea of managing this, not technologically per se, but actually having human beings manage all of these different security products is, I know there's people that are going to flame me for saying this, it almost becomes an impossible task when you look at not just the proliferation of technologies, but the proliferation of security technologies. It's almost impossible for a standard human being to keep up.
No, I think you nailed it exactly right, and it's one of those interesting things. So if we look at how these products get developed, their customers come back and they say, "I don't even know how to manage this." They go, "Oh, I've got an idea. We're going to build a management platform, and we're going to solve all your problems." Except for they don't, because then I've got a management platform for every single thing that I have, and I'm still trying to make it make sense. And if we're really candid about it, a lot of people don't even know why they have stuff. It's dogmatic. It's because someone told them to have it, or because I'm supposed to have it. Okay, well, is it working? I don't know.
I get this pretty dashboard that I log into every day.
Or it's not alerting me, right? Or I've got so many alerts, I turned it off. I don't care anymore. Those are the things that come into it. So I'll tell you what, one of the things I ask people, when we talk about communication, a lot of people go right to, how do I communicate with other people? And one of the things we point out a lot with the security leaders we work with is you have to think about two different aspects. One is the structure of communication, and the other is how technically the solutions you're looking at are able to communicate. And so one of the basis I look at is, if I go put something else in my environment, does it, A, communicate with anything else I currently have, and B, does it make anything else I'm doing better? Does it give it better context? Does it give me a signal? Or at the human level, does this give me something I need that lets me communicate better to somebody else? If you can't answer yes to that, I'd love to see the case where it's still a good decision, but in my world, that's.
I think that's really interesting, right? Because what you're talking about is you're putting people first without sounding too touchy-feely, right? The idea, if you buy a product, does this enable a person to do their job better? Yes or no? It's a very, very simple binary decision, right? And if it does enable that person to do their job better, does it give them better data to communicate with other people in the organization to allow them to make informed decisions? Yes or no? It becomes very, very, very simple if you try to put people at the center. But the concern I have, and I don't know how you help your customers deal with this, and we talked about this on the webcast that we just finished up, is many organizations' number one goal is not enabling people, but trying to automate and remove people from an organization. And those two things seem like they're very much in conflict.
Yeah, they seem that way, and it's a paradox. They're not. Here's why they're not. It depends. I offer this thing called the 5 lenses of value. It's on my website, and we can certainly make it available to everybody. There's no mystery to it, except for this. One of the values is, do I increase the competence of my team and the capabilities of the team? And so, when I talk about does it help you do stuff, most of the things that we can automate away today successfully, they're pretty low value tasks. I'm happy to automate that crap away and let smart people go focus on better, smarter things, or things that really require their time. Or I talk about risk catnip a lot. Those are the things that we're good at doing. But when you really look at it and say, did that add any value to what we're trying to get accomplished? The answer is typically no, not even close. So when I look at it that way, like for example, let's look at the communication for a second. If I can take me out of the communication loop and I can present information in a context that somebody else can act on and they don't need me anymore, then A, I'm not a bottleneck, and B, I don't really need to be tied up doing that. So that's a double win. Same time, if I can free up some cycles from the stuff that we're supposed to be able to do, that's better. Now, where the conflict you just pointed out leads to is, oh, cool, I can cut headcount? Yeah, all right. Well, that's a different conversation in a different context. Frankly, as you pointed out already, so much of what, I just realized I've been doing this now for over 20 years. I'm still facing some of the same challenges that we faced 20 years ago. It's not, we got different blinky lights. We have new capabilities now. I'm actually starting to see things that we did 20 years ago that never really worked starting to have a shot now. So it's actually oddly exciting. But the whole head count thing, that's people looking at the wrong stuff. That's a different issue that we got to probably tackle.
I do want to say, with respects to FireMon, and if you work for FireMon, you can thank me later, that this is actually a good example of some of what Michael was talking about, and John as well, that it allows the firewall administration to hopefully, and I haven't used FireMon, but I've talked to some people that have, it allows them to be more effective and efficient at pushing out firewall rules across especially large organizations that have hundreds of firewalls, to make sure that you're not making heinous mistakes, but also I think to help automate that management of your firewall so that you can go on and do other better, more interesting things than, where every time you need to add a firewall rule, look at 30 other firewall rule sets and see how it will affect them. FireMon helps with that from what they claim. So you're welcome, FireMon. We actually started the year off saying good things about a vendor. I feel it's positive energy right up until we'll get to another story, and then John will just put that to rest. But that's okay.
Let's anger a vendor. Let's move on to
Bitdefender. We were way too positive. We need to move on to Bitdefender. So Bitdefender, this is their second iteration of a device intended for the home network to, as they claim, detect hackers and malware. However, one of the primary features of the device is that it detects when default credentials are being used on your devices inside of the home network. Now, a couple things on that. One, it's likely only doing that for people from the internet, right? Because then it would need a span port in the home network to detect, I don't know, a story that I covered earlier this week about malware going on your Android phone and then pwning your router and changing your DNS settings on your router. So that blows that right out of the water. Secondly, they're making this for the home. This would be really awesome to have in the enterprise.
Well, okay. So the reason why I'm probably going to make Bitdefender uncomfortable is this is getting really, really, really super close to Tenable's patents for passive vulnerability assessment scanning, PVS, and that's it gets into a larger conversation. Once again, I'd like to get Michael's thoughts on this too, because Paul, as much as I hate to say this, I got a pretty good idea about what you think on a lot of things, and Michael usually comes in at a completely different angle, and they're just not at that point yet. And I'm wondering if they're not at that point of actually looking for vulnerabilities, even though they're kind of starting to take a step there by looking for default credentials whenever systems are communicating outbound. But this looks like it's right on that precipice of starting to watch the traffic in your environment, looking for vulnerable refrigerators, looking for vulnerable Rokus, looking for vulnerable Apple TVs. And then what happens once you cross into that realm? I mean, is that something that Tenable is going to try to defend? Because they do look at that as one of their core products. And if you have somebody like Tenable that has those types of patents, does that actually chill any technological innovation because of those patents? So it's something like point. Reading this, I think the product sounds great. I think it's really cool. They're targeting home users. This is fantastic. It's something you want to give to your parents, your aunts, your uncles to try to better secure their environment. But I worry, is it possible for them to go that next mile and actually start looking for vulnerabilities on the inside of their network with user agent strings? Or do the patents just shut that down immediately?
Well,
all right. So
go ahead, Michael.
Here's what's Well, so there's a couple things popping in my head, and I'm not sure where to start. Let's start with the Tenable side. I love intellectual property. I don't know why. It's always fascinated me, and I guess if I ever got silly and went to law school, that's probably where I'd focus. I think it'll be interesting to see. I think that's a good point. I didn't even think of that, John, until you mentioned it. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens because, as I'm reading a little bit more about how they operate this, yeah, that's going to be neat. Now, keep in mind, when you have a patent, that doesn't necessarily exclude anybody else from doing anything because it's still on you to defend that patent. So now it's going to be interesting to see, does Tenable step up? Do they reach out? Because a lot of these things, they get settled really fast, as in here, we'll pay a licensing fee. Okay, good, and it's knocked out. But also then, if Tenable has to defend this, it'll be, unless they've already defended it, I don't have that insight. But if they've already defended it, then they've got a good track record. If not, that'd be interesting because they both have money that they can spend on that. I think it'd be a distraction for both of them, but it's interesting. Now, here's my other part, and it's fascinating because I try not to be cynical, but we lived through the 90s. And if you remember the mantra of the 90s, because we're still paying for it today, it's internet bad, firewall good. And when we went to enterprises and we tried to help them understand how and why they should invest in security, that was our simple mantra. And the reason was we didn't know how to explain anything else. And so we said, well, do you got a firewall? And you go, why do I need a firewall? Well, you're connecting to the internet. Bad things happen on the internet. But if you have a firewall, you're good. Oh, okay. I'll buy a firewall. By the way, we didn't really explain, and you have to set the rules properly, and you probably should audit them, and, you should take logs and review the logs. And so for a long time, it was, well, I got an internet. I'm good. Thanks. I don't even know why I'm going to, I've got a firewall, rather. I'm good. Why are we going to talk to you? So I'm looking at this, and I'm kind of trying to unpack it. And so they're basically saying, okay, so there's this Internet of Things, and all your stuff is connected. And we know that and this is about the time of year where the news station is going to tell us again about some parent who freaked out because they heard somebody's voice in their kid's nursery on the two-way camera. Like I'm surprised it hasn't shown up yet. But seriously, in the next month, it's time. We're due, and that's going to come up again, and that's going to be perfect for Bitdefender to step in and say, we've got the solution. You don't want creepos looking at your kids on your internet-connected whatever or your doorbell or whatever else. Yep, we got the solution, and it's back to internet bad, but here, my device good. Are we going to not focus then on some of the hygiene that I guess one argument could be this is great and this is the answer, and that's how we can get around all this stuff. Or are we just going to create a bunch of people? How would you explain this? This is a geeky thing. I'm running this through my head right now to say, aside from buying it from people in my family and saying, here, I'm just going to come to your house and set it up for you. How do you explain this to somebody?
I think that it's something we have to get into, right? I don't know. We've got to somehow make it easier for home users to do this. Paul and I got flamed last summer really hard during one of our webcasts. We were talking about, I made the comment, something to the effect of computer security has all but ignored the home user. And then Paul said something, and I came back and I said, and you know what? I don't have time to worry about the home user because I'm busy with the enterprise things. And this guy came back really hard at us and said, how dare you? And he made a point. But it's a concept of triage for me. I can only focus on so much, and enterprise level customers and government customers are where I need to focus on right now. But this is a step in the right direction of trying to make it easier for home users. And imagine if it was something where a user got an email and it said, look, you need to upgrade your refrigerator. Here's some instructions on how to upgrade your refrigerator. You need to upgrade your Roku. You need to change your password. And they got easy step-by-step instructions on how to do that. I think that would actually be a product eventually that would have a place in the market. Not for everybody, but damn, it would be a step in the right direction. But it goes back to the core question. Is it possible for somebody to try to enter into the home market whenever there's so many patents trying to lock down all of these things that are all being leveraged for millions of dollars in the enterprise level? Once again, not a dig on Tenable. I believe in intellectual property and protecting intellectual property. But is it possible for a small niche vendor to start stepping into the home market whenever so many of the patents are tied up with enterprise players who have no interest in moving into the home market at all?
No, and that's a great point. And I don't know if these devices that secure your home network from your vulnerable IoT devices are necessarily what we need. It kind of goes back to our previous thing about, yo, dog, you need another IoT device to secure your IoT devices. Right. And so here's like another thing. So now the home user needs a firewall, and then they need another firewall for all of their IoT devices, or they need one much bigger firewall, which is going to be a lot more expensive, and not many people are going to buy it. And oh, by the way, if it's just alerting, what's the likelihood that home users are going to ignore the alerts? We see that in the enterprise. Michael was just talking about, you're overwhelmed with alerts, you just turn them off. So, and then how is it going to protect from every possible attack? No one could possibly.
That's why you've got a subscription, right? I mean, this is the other thing. We talk about this stuff on Startup all the time. The new model is everything's got to be driven by subscription. For what it's worth, I like that model. But so just so we think about this for a second, we have a struggle getting people to buy a new router and to spend more than $60 or $70 on a router. So now I'm going to say, hey, you bought all that smart stuff in your house. Although, wait, what did we just see? Was it Samsung or LG? Somebody just had their smart TV locked up.
It was Google.
Okay.
It was a Google TV.
So people are going to start crying about this stuff and they go, oh, well, you could buy our thing. It's only $200 and $100 a year. But as you pointed out, what is that actually going to do? But I think John had a great point in terms of when will we see people start to do it? Look, love them or hate them, Apple's leading the way on that. Google's leading the way on that. Microsoft is catching up on that. And it's interesting to watch those three, and Amazon's in there now, I guess, kind of pushing each other on updates and auto updates and writability and everything else. I think what happened, I spent a lot of time thinking about this. It moved so fast. I used to tell people, if you ask a question and somebody looks at you kind of condescendingly and says, well, I can't explain it to you, take them at face value. Just cut off the to you. They can't explain it. We got a lot of stuff happening. It's moving fast. The landscape continues to change. So even though I commented it's the same problems for 20 years, they're the same, but they're different. And I appreciate that. And as that all shifts and changes, taking time to get our heads wrapped around it so that we actually understand the core problem that we're trying to solve and then put forth solutions that work for everybody, I think is really kind of fascinating, as in, yeah, it's a hard problem to solve. I'll tell you something that sparked my interest, and then we can get off of this. Lawn sprinkler systems. In the South, everybody has one. And invariably something goes wrong with it. In fact, we had a lightning strike this year that took out a bunch of the heads, and it was really kind of interesting. And in the process, I followed the guy around who was fixing them, and he explained to me that they're all. That
doesn't sound creepy at all.
I did it with permission, and I had my camera out. But so I mean, if you've watched me on any of these programs, I'm nonstop with questions, and but this guy was actually more talkative than I had questions. And he was explaining to me how, like 20 years ago, the industry was highly competitive. They weren't all the same voltage. They weren't all the same size tubing. They weren't all the same size heads. And they got together as an industry and said, you know what, this is going to kill us. And so now you can trade out, whether you go with Toro or you go with Rainbird or you go with Thompson or you go with somebody else. It doesn't matter. You can mix and match your whole system. It'll work great. And that's what we need to get to. We've got to get to a point where people realize that competition in business is awesome. Competition for value is awesome. But if you're trying to provide some basic utility around security, and we need to think at least at a fundamental level of security as a utility, there needs to be some level of interoperability and stuff. And so let's go back to the last thing. Every time somebody stands up their own new way of doing it, we got to knock that off. There's got to be a common structure that gets us to some baseline. And I think when we can achieve that, we're going to see remarkable gains. And at the same time, we're going to understand how to explain stuff to people. Here's the 5 things you need to know, and everybody gets them. And then a lot of these problems start to go away.
But Michael, the real question is, can you voice activate your sprinkler system?
I can't, no.
Oh, I can. Get it. Come on. I mean, that's just table stakes.
It is table stakes. That's why I don't play.
Oh my gosh.
So there's
I like that. Only way to win.
That's right. Proliferation of articles is interesting. Like, it was very hard to find enterprise security news the end of 2016 and in this particular week, because no one's making any real product or integration announcements, largely because of the turnover for the new year. Everyone's busy having their sales kickoff meetings and holding back things in preparation for RSA in our industry. So that's where the stories are kind of weird. There's not too many product announcements.
But this next one that you had up, the Reuters article, this is without question the single shortest article we have ever linked to.
Yeah, I apologize. Go to landesk.com and right on their main page, they did get they sold to Clear Lake Capital Group, and they're joining forces with Heat Software, which is, this is a pretty major, and Landesk is a pretty big company. I had not heard of Heat Software before, but apparently there's some, for lack of a better word,
help desk
everyone
software,
drink synergies between these two companies, and they have in fact, I think it was a buy. I don't think it was a merger. So.
Yeah, so I just can't believe how short this was. Usually it would be like Landesk, a global leader in computer security and inventory management. And,
yes.
So I like this. This is straight to the point. It'll make our show go faster.
Okay, so here's the full one. Landesk leadership in providing software to simplify IT complexity is further strengthened by Heat's cloud-based service management, CSM, and unified endpoint management, UEM, software solutions. Just not to disappoint you, John.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad that came through.
Yeah. So I don't know if
that really clarified it for me. I'm in.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about with the story other than it was a light week for stories. So
all right. So I've got another one for Michael. It's cool. I don't come on regular Security Weekly all that much just because it lines up with my kids being driven all over the place.
I'm running the same thing these days.
Yeah. So this, I've got to get your take on this because, all right, CIOs will thwart cybersecurity threats with behavioral analytics in 2017. I hate articles like this because it's basically leading people down a path that makes them think that it is possible to thwart cyber risks. Something like this just doesn't help the landscape at all, and it actually, I think, makes CIOs become dumber because they start to believe this crap. And I'd love to get your opinion on it because, like, you're so heavily tied into the human aspect and communications and how people look at things.
Yeah. Now, at the risk here, right, because I write for IDG, and this is part of that family. What I'll just say categorically is these things make me throw stuff every day for precisely that reason. It's clickbait stuff. It pulls people in, and I get it. Usually I'm privately bitching about it to somebody because this kind of stuff drives me absolutely bonkers.
And that's exactly why I added the story in there, by the way, was not because I thought it was a good article.
Oh, this will fire up John and Michael.
Exactly.
Woo.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, well, at least he knows us. Look. Now here's the thing. Here's what I will say though. So let me pick it apart then. Behavioral analytics. You know what? We're actually that was a myth 20 years ago. We're starting to see some stuff where it could work. Cool. Now, is 2017 the year? No.
Yeah.
Just not even really going to happen. But so let me look at this then and try to parse it differently. All right. So software that detects and alerts companies to anomalous behavior on CIO's purchase list for the new year when spending on cybersecurity tools is expected to increase. I don't know about you guys. I'm finding it's really kind of mixed. I'm talking to I've got some CISOs, and some CIOs that say, "Oh yeah, no, I'm green lit. I can go get whatever I want." And then I've got some that are still crying that it's 18 months to figure out a new solution and get it in house, and that makes me cry. That's pure lack of leadership around the board. If you have a problem and it takes you 18 months to figure it out and get something on board to try to address it. You know what? That's just really horrible.
a lot of those organizations that we're seeing that have the much longer cycles to try to get anything moving are organizations that just got burnt very heavily, or got burnt multiple times. Like they basically tried, when it was data loss prevention, right? Everything was data loss prevention. They jumped on that bandwagon, spent a tremendous amount of money on data loss prevention. And then the threat intelligence feed bandwagon showed up, and they jumped on that one. And there's one thing about this article, and I don't necessarily blame the author of this article so much for the title of this CIO IDG article. But there's something that he has further on down in the article that resonates. It says, boards free up budget, but expect proof of protection. And I think that this is going to happen more and more in 2017. If somebody says, we spent $500,000 on cyber threat intelligence feeds, how has that actually improved our security? Quantifiably, show us.
Bingo.
And
that's
true in this. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of that. And that's why I think you're going to see a lot of budgets being pulled back, because a lot of boards are sick and tired of spending a lot of money and they're not actually seeing it be effective.
Yeah, look, we did that reactionary drumbeat. Oh, it's bad. The cybers, they're coming to get you. I need money. Okay, right? And by the way, we've been doing this for 20 years too. HIPAA came along and needed a ton of money. By the way, that we've already lived that, and now we're saying healthcare is the biggest targeted, and they've got no budgets and they don't know what they're doing. And I don't mean that the people in healthcare don't know what they're doing. What I mean is we're just overrun by it. Wait a minute. We already hit that drum. Like, you got to stop with this. This is the highlight of this article, and I absolutely love it. And by the way, I'm seeing more of this. I've started to work with some boards, and they're asking these types of questions, and they're great questions to ask, and I want to see more of it. When we do the straight talk stuff, here's the way it works, right? What's the problem you're trying to solve? You need to be able to articulate it. Are you ready to take on that solution or to address that, or do you have something more fundamental you need to do first? What's the value of doing it? Here's what I always tell everybody with value. This is not a return on investment. It's not a return on security investment. It's not a cost-benefit analysis. It's straight up, so let's use your point. If I throw $500,000 into this, frankly, in 90 days, I want to see that I got $500,000 of benefit. Measure it any way you want. Don't really care. And at the end of the year, I want to see a 3 to 5x. I mean, everybody in the world today is 10x. I got 10x everything. You show me a solid 3x. $1.5 million of benefit back to your team, you're solid. And the reason this is so important is because then the next time you go ask for something, if you can tell me what the problem is, why you're ready for it, that it's going to be valuable, you've got a track record of making good decisions, you can measure it. And keep in mind now, this is my new change for this year. Measurement isn't about anything other than protecting that value. If you did your analysis up front and you came back and said, hey man, if we put this in, right, it's going to communicate with these tools. It's going to arm our team this way. We're going to be able to do this type of protection. Here's how I'm going to make sure it's working. Here's how we're going to make those tweaks and adjustments. You're solid. Then the next time you have a need and you go and you make the case for it, you've got the bona fides. They'll let you have it. Well, I mean, provided it's a reasonable request and stuff. I think this is great. I want to see more boards asking questions. That's actually one of the things that I'm working on this year is helping boards understand how to ask better questions and then know if they just got snowed or not in the answers.
My last story in here is nowhere near as thought-provoking as our previous article. Nginx is gaining traction on the web. I think a lot of this is due to cloud providers and just a lot of movement into the cloud. Nginx seems to be gaining some traction on Apache, and was just kind of a heads up to everyone in the enterprise that, I think a lot of people think, well, you have a web server and it's Apache and that's what we do. But Nginx is growing so much so that, I think you might not even know what your web server is in a lot of cases. For example, Cloudflare is using a customized version of Nginx, which powers 3.6 million active sites. So anyway.
Yep. And we're definitely seeing it more and more in the test too.
Yeah.
I read that. So what's the implication?
I think the implication is anytime we're dealing with, we'll just look at it from security, anytime we see widespread adoption of new technologies, you always wonder, a lot of people say we're switching away from Apache because maybe there were some vulnerabilities that burnt them. Maybe they were running Apache and they were running PHP on top of it and they got burnt. Or Tomcat.
It's performance too, John, right?
Yep, and performance. So anytime we have a new up-and-comer, right, it's fairly safe to assume that particular technology has not been as vetted as something like Apache or IIS. And I think for people like Paul and I, we are always we're excited because new technologies are shiny and that's awesome. But also at the exact same time, you start to cringe because you're seeing lots and lots of corporate customers starting to implement this technology, and you just wait for the other shoe to drop, and all of a sudden the vulnerabilities start popping up. I would say PHP would be a really good example of this. PHP takes off about 7-8 years ago, and it starts growing, and it's turned into an absolute nightmare. So much so that you have people like Dave Attell that say it's impossible for you to secure it. I think his quote is, "You should allow as many PHP web servers as you would allow a pregnant woman to smoke cigarettes in your organization." So we worry about that, right? So it's bright, shiny, it's new, and that's cool. Its performance is great, but then we also cringe because we're waiting for that tidal wave of security vulnerabilities that'll inevitably start coming after it starts becoming widely adopted.
That's a fantastic point.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And we're going to end this segment on a high note and take a short break and come back and talk about cyber insurance. So stay tuned.